I'm Vinnie Politan. The subject of my investigation is convicted child killer Lori Daybell, who is on trial again, this time for conspiracy to commit the murder of husband number 4, Charles Vallow. Here's the story. Lori Vallow Daybell's marriage to Charles Vallow began in 2006 and initially appeared stable. In 2013, they adopted Charles' grandnephew, Joshua J.J. Vallow, who was diagnosed with autism. However, by early 2019, their relationship deteriorated as Lori became increasingly immersed in apocalyptic beliefs, claiming to be a divine figure tasked with preparing for the return of Jesus. She accused Charles of being possessed by a dark spirit named Ned Schneider and threatened his life. Fearing for his safety, Charles filed for divorce and sought a protective order citing Lori's erratic behaviors and threats. Then on July 11, 2019, Charles was fatally shot by Lori's brother, Alex Cox, during a confrontation at Lori's home in Arizona. Cox claimed self-defense, but prosecutors allege Lori conspired in the killing to obtain Charles' life insurance and pursue a relationship with Chad Daybell, who she married months later. Lori is on trial in Maricopa County for conspiracy to commit murder in Charles' death and is representing herself in the courtroom. So a big issue in this case, in this particular trial, is the relationship between Lori and Charles. Lori, now Daybell, and Charles Vallow. They were married at the time. But there were things happening. Like Charles had filed for divorce and then had rescinded that filing. And they were trying to get back together, yet they were living separately. So there was definitely a level of estrangement in the relationship. But then, during the trial, a woman named Nancy Jo Hancock took the witness stand and testified about something that I knew nothing about. I've been covering this story almost since the beginning. Take a listen to the testimony of Nancy Jo Hancock, a woman who was apparently dating Charles Vallow.
Did you eventually meet Charles in person?
I did.
And how many times did you get to meet him in person?
Just once.
What day was that?
He was flying in from Houston, and we had arranged to go to dinner that night. His plane was delayed, and so I met him that night on the 10th of July.
There was a date on the 10th of July. I want to put this in perspective for a second. July 10th, Charles goes on a first date with this woman, Nancy Jo. They'd been texting and speaking to one another for about a week, met on a dating app. And then the next day, the very next day, Charles is shot and killed at Lori's house by her brother, Alex Cox. Is that a coincidence? Brings us to the first question in our investigation. Did Lori know Charles was dating? Did she know? Charles is on a dating app. So he may have dated other women. I don't know. This may have been the first. But did Lori know Charles was dating? And I wonder if she knew about that date the night before. Joining us, retired police commander, religious cult expert, absolutely needed in this case, and host of Profiling Evil podcast, also needed for this case, author of the book Deceived, also needed for this case, Mike King joins us. Mike, thank you so much for joining us. This, to me, was, you know, we've watched 2 trials already. And all of a sudden, I've got a new revelation about something that was going on here. What are your thoughts about whether or not Lori knew Charles was dating?
You know, I think Lori is too transparent with her emotion to have known, Vinny. She would have let somebody know, and she would have used that as collateral to continue building this mountain of evidence that she wanted to make him out as a bad guy. Either that, or the prophetess completely missed that piece of revelation as it was coming down, because she certainly, in my opinion, didn't know that that was happening. I don't think she even knew that he put out a dating out on a dating app that he was doing that. But she had to have known that their relationship was in the tank. And much of that, what we're learning, because of the affairs, was part of her doing.
Also joining us right now, Lori Daybell's cousin, author of I Walked Through the Fire to Get Here, and host of the podcast, The Midlife Revolution. Megan Connor is with us. Megan has been inside the courtroom for all of this. I want to do this, Megan. I want to show folks parts of that cross-examination, because Lori's representing herself. So when Nancy Jo Hancock is on the stand and being cross-examined, it's Lori Daybell who is stepping up to the podium to ask the questions to the woman who was dating or had at least one date with Charles the night before Alex shot and killed Charles. Let's take a look.
Charles was in the process of a divorce.
He was not in the process of a divorce. Did it surprise you to find that out? You've seen it all on TV where we're not getting divorced.
Okay.
Do you go on dates with married men?
I'm going
Not naturally?
Argumentative. I'm going to also object under 611 for harassment.
All right. I'll sustain the objection.
Your Honor, do I not have a right to cross-examine this witness for what she has already testified to?
You can cross-examine her about what she's testified to.
But you did not know he was married.
I knew his divorce was not final.
His divorce was not started. So you spent your whole date getting to know each other, talking about me.
Don't flatter yourself. No, we did not spend the whole time talking about you.
So would it be fair to say that you knew my husband for a week?
Approximately.
Okay. And then you had no contact with Charles after that, correct?
Well, he was dead, so clearly I didn't have contact with him.
Let me tell you, Megan, what did these moments where Lori is cross-examining Nancy Jo, what did they tell you about what Lori may or may not have known about Charles dating?
Well, I don't think that she suspected that Charles was dating anyone, but I think what we can all surmise from all of the testimony that we've seen so far in this trial is that Lori is a deeply insecure person, and it's almost as if she forgets the venue that she's in. She forgets what is at stake here. She forgets what she's been charged with, and all she cares about is finding out what people said about her.
That's incredible insight. That is incredible insight into Lori Daybell. And I'm wondering, you know, in trials, the way it generally works is that there's an exchange of discovery. I know that Lori complained pre-trial about being able to get certain things. Megan, are we pretty confident that prior to that courtroom scene that she found out about Nancy Jo? Or is there a chance that she found out about Nancy Jo inside the courtroom?
Well, under the rules of discovery, I'm sure she knew that Nancy Jo was going to testify. I'm sure that she already knew what Nancy Jo was going to present. And I think that Lori probably was waiting for this moment. She was leading up to this moment. She knew that this confrontation was going to happen in the courtroom. I think she planned ahead how she was going to handle this interaction. And I think she was infuriated that Charles was dating somebody. And I think she planned to sort of try to shame Nancy Jo in the courtroom, and forgetting that she's on trial for conspiracy to commit murder, and really just wanting to get her digs in rather than actually conducting a legal process here.
Let's take a listen to this. This is Lori from her police interview, Mike. And she's talking about a moment where she has Charles' phone and Charles wants to get it back. And now we know that Charles was on a dating app. So putting it in that context, let's take a listen.
He came back in and his phone was on the counter and I had his phone. And he was like, give me my phone. And I was like, why don't you show me your text that you've been texting, blah, 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 you know, whatever. Because he's like acting really weird, like he's plotting something.
All right, Mike, what do you think the concern may have been there from Charles, from Lori getting her paws on his phone?
Well, we certainly have seen many domestic violence issues explode because of someone seeing text messages or communications on their partner's phone. I think it's also interesting because we learn more as the trial goes on and Adam gets on the stand, that we learn that there was more from Adam in regard to those texts that were directly pointed toward both Alex and Lori. And that too may have been something that had her really frustrated, unless she also figured out along the way that they were hoping, and part of Charles's trip into Phoenix was to do an intervention and try to actually capture some video and audio of Lori talking about her bizarre belief systems that they could then use to try to get her either ecclesiastic or professional mental health counseling. And so I think there are like 3 different buckets here, Vinnie, that possibly could have caused that eruption that occurred in there.
Okay, Mike King, Megan Connor staying with us. Coming up next, what was going on between Charles and Lori's daughter, Tylee?
I was kind of like Al's okay, right?
Lori Daybell.
Already convicted for the murders of her children.
Doomsday Cult mom is now lawyer Lori.
She's representing herself.
On charges of conspiring to murder her 4th husband.
She said, I can murder you now.
She really thinks she's equipped to try this case.
She appears very sure of herself.
I have real trial experience.
It's going to be a strange trial. We'll see how it plays out.
The Cult Mom Conspiracy Trial. Live coverage continues Monday morning on Court TV.
I was kind of like Al's okay, right? Because that's my uncle. So I just wanted to make sure that my stepdad didn't do anything to my uncle and stuff. And so she was like, no, Al's fine. We're just gonna take JJ to school. And I was like, okay.
That is fascinating, heartbreaking all at once. That's Tylee speaking about her stepdad and her uncle. And she wanted to make sure that her stepdad didn't hurt her uncle. Let's remember her uncle is the one who takes her life and burns her body and puts it in the backyard of Chad Daybell. Wow. Take a listen to more from the police interview of, again, Tylee talking about her stepdad. That's Charles Vallow, her uncle, who was Alex Cox, and what happened that day.
There have been a few violent times with him when I was really scared that he was gonna hit me or hit my mom, just because everything was kind of crazy. Me and him have always kind of not gotten along, just since I was little. And so there have been a few times that we've gotten in fights and stuff like that. And so, so I'm just kind of always scared of that.
So what is going on here? This is Tylee talking about Charles, her stepdad, the one who is supporting her and provided the home. I think he purchased a car for her as well. But it seems that there is some tension there. And that brings us to the next question in our investigation. And it's about Charles and Tylee. What was going on between Charles and Tylee? What was this tension in the household that Tylee seems to be referring to in that police interview after Charles is shot by her uncle? Let's bring back in our guests. With us, Mike King and Megan Connor. Megan, let me begin with you. What is going on here between Charles and Tylee?
Well, I think that some of it is the normal tension that exists between parents, step-parents, and a teenage child. But I also highly suspect that Lori was doing some work to alienate Charles from Tylee, because Lori wanted her kids to be closest to her. She did not want anyone else to be close to her kids. We saw this where she had some problems with Colby and his romantic relationships. And so I think that Lori just really wanted Tylee to be loyal to Lori and did not want her to have a good, healthy relationship with Charles. And so I think there was probably some work that she did to alienate the two from each other, where she probably, you know, told Tylee things that would make her not like Charles, not want to have a good relationship with Charles. I think that was what was at the crux of it.
And Lori talked about this relationship between Charles and Tylee in her opening statement. Let's take a listen.
When she became a teenager, the relationship between Tylee and her stepfather, Charles, became so difficult that Tylee and Charles had to seek a therapist, a family therapist, to stop them from fighting. The evidence will show that Charles and Tylee's fighting increased greatly in January of 2019 when Charles and I temporarily separated. The evidence will show that several people witnessed these terrible arguments between Tylee and Charles that increased to physical in 2019. Charles and Tylee had major increasing arguments, two in February of 2019, one of March in 2019, which was captured on video, one in May of 2019, one in June of 2019, and then the worst of all in July 2019.
Mike King, too bad she murdered someone who would be a good witness for her if any of this is true, right? If she's trying to establish that Charles is the bad guy, Charles the violent villain in all of this, it would have been helpful for her if she had Tylee, but she apparently murdered Tylee.
Vinnie, in these kinds of situations, especially when I see a blended situation like this, what I try to do is go back and look historically at what the family fiber and network was like. I mean, think about this. The fact that Charles Vallow stepped in when I think Tylee was around 3 years old. And so he was truly a father figure for her through all of her years until she was 16 and this climatic end of his life. I agree with Megan that there are natural things that happen as these kids become teenagers and they start to get a little combative. But I think as Lori's religious delusions started to intensify, this guy who was providing for the family, who was showing up at her school functions, going to her sporting events, he acting like he was a dad to her, and I think he loved her deeply. That all of a sudden, as Lori starts getting a little bit off base, then she starts casting Charles as a dark spirit. And I guarantee that she was being told, Tylee was being told by her mother, that Charles was a zombie. I just still remember hearing one comment from Tylee on a recording where she said, I think Lori must have accused her of being a zombie, and she was pushing back saying, Mom, I'm not a zombie. Imagine how traumatic this child's teenage years were as her mother was trying to maintain control, because it's clear that control is really important to Lori Vallow Daybell. And she's now starting to try to turn this child over to follow along with the same kinds of things. And what child wouldn't listen to their mom, see the fighting that's going on between their parents, and feel a little disrupted in their own lifestyle? So I believe what may have started out as a really healthy stepfather-stepdaughter relationship turned sour, not just because of a kid turning 13, 14, and 15, but because of a mother whose ideology went completely south of the border and started telling her, hey, this guy we're living with is a zombie, and that would have been terrifying for a child.
Now, Lori also brought this up on the cross-examination of Charles' sister, Kay Woodcock. Let's take a look at that.
Were you aware at all of the relationship between Charles and Tylee?
It was
let's say, it was a bit contemptuous. It seemed like there was always a lot of drama going on, and so that's all I knew. He didn't say too much about it, and I didn't pry.
Megan, so Kay seemed to get wind of some of this, but didn't pry, didn't get any details. One of the things that Lori mentioned, she said, oh, one of these arguments was captured on video. Do we think that that video is going to make its way into this courtroom?
Well, I think it's unlikely. I think the video that she's talking about is probably something that she took on her own cell phone. I think it is probably doesn't meet the rules of evidence, as it were. I think that Lori is constantly trying to get her own narrative out there, whether it's supported by evidence or not. And we've seen throughout this trial where Lori has tried to testify by adding comments at the end of witness statements. She has tried to get in questions and narratives that are without the rules of evidence. And I think she just really does not fundamentally understand what's allowed in court and what is not. So whether or not what she has is able to be admissible in court is always going to be in question. I think what is at the bottom line is that Lori wants her narrative to be what it is, whether or not it's allowed or not. And I just think she has a lot of ideas about what she wants to say. And I think we've seen this throughout the trial. She doesn't really care about what's allowed in court. She just wants to be able to say what she wants to say.
Absolutely. And sometimes when folks go pro se, they get a little more leeway than a licensed attorney would inside a courtroom. Megan is going to stay with us. Mike King, thank you so much. Up next, when did Lori and Kay's relationship go south? I'm Vinnie Politan. We continue our investigation of child killer Lori Daybell, who in her latest murder trial has been accused of taking the life of her fourth husband, Charles, to be with her fifth husband, Chad, and try to collect $1 million of life insurance money. Here's the story. Lori Daybell's murder convictions and legal troubles have deeply affected many relationships in her life, including her brother, Adam Cox, and her sister-in-law, Kay Woodcock. Adam Cox believes Lori conspired in the 2019 murder of her estranged husband, Charles Vallow. He says Lori had adopted extreme religious beliefs, claiming to be transforming into a celestial being. Adam revealed that Charles was killed just before an attempted intervention to bring Lori back to mainstream beliefs. Meanwhile, Kay Woodcock, Charles Vallow's sister, and her husband Larry were the grandparents of Joshua J.J. Vallow, who Charles and Lori had adopted. After Charles' death, the Woodcocks became vocal advocates for J.J. and his sister Tylee Ryan, especially during their disappearance. Kay was one of the first people to figure out that Lori's children, JJ and Tylee, were missing. Her testimony in Lori's trial provided emotional insight into the family's turmoil and the unspeakable tragedy and loss of life. You know, throughout this entire case and peeling back the layers, I mean, all this started when Kay and Larry Woodcock from down in Louisiana were trying to get in contact with their grandson, JJ. And initially, they were so excited and happy that Lori and Charles had decided to adopt JJ. They were ecstatic. They're like, okay, yeah, this is where our grandson should be. And then things went so bad. I want you to take a listen to Kay, and you're going to listen to her in two places. Kay, on the witness stand, talking about Lori and her relationship with Lori. Then you're going to hear her being interviewed on court TV. by former Court TV correspondent Chanley Painter. But there's a real contrast in the way Kay sees Lori and their relationship. Take a listen.
When Lori and I were together, it was like we hadn't missed a minute. We just took up where we left off, and she's very outgoing, and she's very friendly and very easy to talk to, and so we got along rather well, and I loved her.
If I was Lori Vallow right now, what would you say to me?
I'm not going to say what crossed my mind. Let me think of a nice way.
We can always bleep you out.
Okay, you stupid bitch. What are you thinking? Okay, that's what I first want to say. Selfish, greedy, narcissistic bitch. That's what I think.
And that brings us to the next question in our investigation. And it's about this relationship between Lori and Kay. When did Lori and Kay's relationship go south? At one point, there's a lot of things happening, right? There's a lot of moving parts. Lori's going through all these changes in her beliefs. There's the issues, obviously, with JJ and Charles as well. Joining us to help us figure this out, Lori Vallow Daybell's cousin and author of I Walked Through the Fire to Get Here, Megan Connor, is with us, and host of the Mormon Stories podcast, John DeLynn, also here. Thank you, both of you, for being here. Megan, why don't you get us started on this? What was happening? Who was figuring out what about whom, and when did things go south here?
Well, I will say I've gotten to know Kay pretty well throughout this entire process, through all of these trials. And I know her to be a very kind and forgiving person. And I 100% believe that Kay wanted to have a good relationship with Lori. But the moment that Lori started distancing Kay from JJ, I think that's exactly the moment when it started to go south. I think Kay cared about JJ a great deal. And I think that Lori began to show that the only thing Lori cared about was Lori. And when Kay was not able to get in touch with JJ, when Lori stopped allowing Kay to have regular contact with him, and especially when Lori denied Kay the opportunity to have JJ present at Charles's memorial service, I really think that was, the beginning of the end of their relationship, of course.
John, I want to take a listen to Kay on the witness stand here talking about Charles and how he was concerned for his own well-being.
In 2019, again, without going into what Charles said, did you ever believe that Charles was concerned for his safety?
Charles was absolutely concerned for his safety. Lori had sent me a text, I think it was on a Thursday, that she and Charles were fighting because of some stuff she came up with, and that she and JJ and Tylee were at a hotel.
So, John, this is such a tough spot for Kay, right? Throughout this entire ordeal, because she loves her grandson, JJ. She loved Lori and Charles and felt that was the right place for him to be. Obviously, once Lori ends up becoming what she becomes, it's the wrong place. But this is a difficult thing for her to negotiate while Charles is alive, and then obviously much more difficult once Alex shoots and kills Charles.
Absolutely. And I'm sure at one point or another, Lori was just a normal, traditional, average Latter-day Saint or Mormon. But what I often try to talk about is there are elements of the Latter-day Saint or Mormon tradition or faith that become building blocks for so many of these Mormon-related true crime murders. Everything from Jesus is coming any minute, that there are special people on earth that are supposed to help usher in Jesus' second coming, that we can be possessed by demonic spirits, that your feelings come from God, that sometimes God or the Holy Ghost through your feelings tell you that you need to do something horrible. In Joseph Smith's case, like be polygamist. In, Nephi's case, a character in the Book of Mormon, that it's okay to kill. And even this teaching that we can all become gods someday is absolutely core Mormon doctrine that Lori was operating under. And the average Mormon, the average Latter-day Saint, is not going to murder somebody with these building blocks of beliefs. But these building blocks of beliefs are dangerous enough that if they get in the wrong mind of the wrong life of somebody who's not well, they can lead to catastrophic, even murderous consequences. And I think Kay and, JJ and Tylee and Chad and, there's a whole trail of bodies and of living and dead carnage that have come about as a result of the combination of these toxic beliefs with the likes of Lori Daybell.
There's another thing that is flowing in creating a lot of friction in the relationship, and that is the life insurance. Once Charles is shot and killed, the life insurance goes to Kay, not to Lori. Lori did not expect that, I don't think. Here's Kay on the stand talking about the life insurance policy.
Did you have a conversation with Charles about the beneficiary of his life insurance?
Yes, it was early February when I came here to help him with JJ, and he said, "Look, I'm going to take Lori off as beneficiary, and I'm going to put you as a beneficiary." And I was like, we talked about maybe a minute and a half about it, and I was like, okay, whatever. I really don't want to be that person, but okay. And I never followed up to see if he changed. I didn't know until I got the phone call after he was killed.
Okay, Megan, let me ask you, how angry did this make Lori? Alex shoots and kills Charles, and then she gets zero from the $1 million life insurance policy.
I'm sure she was infuriated because this was her plan all along, and we actually had some commentary from someone who was serving time in the Rexburg jail with her when she found out about this, that she was absolutely infuriated. And this was her plan all along. I think the prosecution in her Idaho trial nailed it when they said that it was about money, power, and sex. Money being first among it. It was the life insurance that was driving it, the possibility of Social Security benefits for her two children and their deceased fathers. I think that was the primary motive behind a lot of this, unfortunately.
And she got and the friction between her and Kay at that point, telling Kay, "I've got 5 children. I've got," well, not exactly. It didn't exactly work out that way. It was more of the plan to have a bigger bag of money down in Hawaii with the prophet, Chad Daybell. Okay, Megan and John Dehlin are going to stay with us. Still to come. What's the connection between Adam Cox, Lori's brother, and Lori's husband, Charles?
He's been talking to my other brother, and my brother came into town at the same time.
Confessing to a murder on camera.
We're here to try and understand the mindsets behind your actions in this case. It sounds like you lost control of yourself.
Not at all. No, not at all. I'm done with this interview.
That's so conniving. Do you understand that?
I'm your worst nightmare, David.
Interview with a Killer, a special 2-hour season premiere. Sunday, 8 Eastern and Pacific, only on Court TV.
He's been talking to my other brother, and my brother came into town at the same time last night. And I haven't talked to my brother in a while, my other brother, and I was like, and so he was texting him on the phone when he first got to my house, and I'm like, why are you texting Adam? Like, do you even talk to him?
This is fascinating, right? So Lori finds out that Charles is texting with her brother Adam, and Adam is a guy who, you know, travels around the country getting his different jobs through the years. He's in the radio business, so he's working at radio stations around the country. So it wasn't really a physically close to Lori, like geographically close to Lori. But Charles is texting with Adam. Adam's coming into town that day, and it's all about an intervention for Lori and all of these beliefs, these doomsday zombie beliefs that she has, that's causing problems in the relationship, problems at home, problems with the family. Take a listen to what Kay had to say about that.
Did you know anything about any type of intervention?
No, he never talked. If he did talk to me about it, and I'm pretty sure I would have remembered that. But no, I know that he and Adam was his confidant during that time, Lori's brother. And so I know that whatever he was doing, you know, Adam was part of it. And, you know, they were just, I knew he was in good hands with Adam, because Adam, they loved Charles, him and his wife.
And usually that is a great thing, right? When a wife's husband and the wife's brother get along and it's great for the family, the dynamic is a little different here. And that brings us to the next question in our investigation. What is the connection between Adam and Charles here? This is an important connection in the way all this is happening, especially that day. Still with us, Lori Vallow, Daybell's cousin, Megan Connor, and host of Mormon Stories podcast, John DeLynn. John, what are your thoughts about this intervention? Because it seems like it's based upon Adam and Charles both getting wind of Lori's zombie doomsday beliefs and wanting to intervene in all of this.
Yeah, it's important for people to understand that the average Mormon is never going to hear the term zombie in relation to Mormon doctrine or Mormon theology. It is a weird derivation of Mormon beliefs. Having said that, as I've mentioned before, as I mentioned in the previous segment, it is built on building blocks of Mormon doctrine and theology. This idea that there are, you know, demonic spirits out there that are sort of like part of Satan's army, and that the world is literally filled with billions and billions of these evil spirits that are constantly trying to break in to our bodies and take over our bodies so that Satan can control us, kind of like robots. That's absolutely core Mormon doctrine and theology. So, you know, the idea of demonic possession, that maybe Lori felt like her kids or other people in her life were possessed by evil spirits, totally normal Mormon stuff. But once you start hearing zombies, that's like taking it to 11, as they say. And I'm sure it was very disturbing and alarming for them, and they didn't really know how to handle it. And I'm sure if they had gone to their Mormon bishop to get help, he wouldn't have known what to do with that either.
Let's take a listen to Adam Cox talk about his relationship with his brother-in-law, Charles.
Let's talk about your relationship with Charles Vallow. Did you and Charles ever text?
Yes.
Did you and Charles ever talk on the phone?
Yes.
At some point, did you learn or become aware of the fact that Lori and Charles were having some marital problems?
Yes.
Did you go to your mom's house?
Yes, I did.
Did that conversation go well?
No.
Did this create a break in your relationship with your mom?
Yes.
Did you stick up for Charles?
Yes.
Did sticking up for Charles create issues between you and most of your family?
Yes.
Okay, Megan, this is, again, insight into the dynamic and everything that's happening. And so you've got, Lori has Adam's a brother, Alex is a brother, and it seems like Alex was buying what she was selling, but Adam wasn't. And this created the conflict, but it also created, I guess, a bond between Adam and Charles.
Yeah, so Lori's mode of operating was to alienate the family against anyone who was against her. And she had told everyone in the family at that point that Charles was having an affair. She had told them all kinds of lies about Charles. And she had told everybody not to talk to Charles. And Adam was the only person in the family who was willing to talk to Charles. And Charles was desperate to find some way to help Lori. And that was really what we see. The evidence bears out that Charles was really trying to help Lori. And Charles believed that if they could get church leadership involved somehow and get Lori's temple recommend taken away, which is the card that allows you to get into the temple, which was really important to Lori at this time. They believed that if they could get that taken away, it would sort of shake something loose in Lori, and that she might come back to mainstream beliefs. She might sort of realize that she had gone off the deep end. So that was really what they were trying to do. Adam and Charles, I believe, really cared about Lori and just wanted her to stop talking about the religious delusion and get back to the mainstream religion and sort of come back to the family, come back to normalcy. And it just seemed like all the forces were working against that happening.
And John, we look at how all this ends up turning out. That seems to be perhaps the friction, the turning point that ends Charles's life. Because Alex is buying it, Charles isn't, Adam isn't. She estranged herself from Adam. He's estranged from the family, and Charles ends up dead.
Yeah, there's a interesting factoid of Mormon history. When Joseph Smith, the founder, started angering people, he got sideways with the governor of Missouri, Lilburn Boggs. And Lilburn Boggs ended up issuing an exterminating order on all Mormons, and all the Mormons were kicked out of the state of Missouri. Joseph Smith was really mad at Lilburn Boggs, the governor of Missouri. So he, allegedly sent a hitman named Porter Rockwell to go assassinate the governor of Missouri. And the governor of Missouri was actually shot, but not killed. So this idea of an assassin or an avenging angel, this teaching of blood atonement, it's actually woven into Mormon doctrine. And I'm sure Alex knew the stories of Porter Rockwell and of Lilburn Boggs and of Joseph Smith. And I'm sure in Alex's own mind, he was playing sort of the avenging angel, angel of justice for his prophetess, which was Lori.
John DeLynn, always great to have your perspective on this program. Thank you so much. Megan Connor, we really appreciate your time and giving us insight into the family and into the courtroom, because you are inside there watching all of this as it happens. Thank you both. Lori Daybell could have had an amazing life surrounded by her children and her family. She could have celebrated being a grandma and watching the little ones grow into happy adults and starting their families. That's the way it's supposed to be. But instead, she chose to murder children. Why? So she could hang out in Hawaii with a grave digger and a bag of money. Why anyone would make that choice, I have no idea. I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for answers, though, as the investigation continues.